Sorry, so I have to keep bashing the US Constitution a little more. Last time I talked about how wildly different the US Senate was designed compared to almost every other upper house in the world. But I want to cut the founding fathers some slack because they didn't know better. They never heard of things like coalition governments or proportional representation. There was no worldwide data for them to analyze, and information still traveled by horse, right? They were like cavemen in social science. So I understand. But there's no excuse for modern Americans to keep ignoring other countries' experiences. It's time to rethink a lot of outdated choices made 2.5 centuries ago. Okay, besides the Senate, another wild thing I want to talk about is the Electoral College. First, I'm sure you all know it overrepresents small states. Not as much as the Senate does, but it's still strange because no other countries have malapportionment in presidential elections. They may have it in parliamentary elections due to regional complexity, but not in presidential elections. So just to refresh, malapportionment means intentionally giving some voters a larger weight than others. But that's not the worst part. Not even the second worst part, okay? So what's the second worst part? The Electoral College not only gives some states more votes per person, but also makes it inevitable that one party wastes more votes than the other. You guys know this, right? Say, if one party wins a state of 7 electoral votes with a 2% margin, the other party wins a state of 6 electoral votes with a 30% margin. Apparently, the party that has more voters ends up having fewer electoral votes. So the Electoral College not only overrepresents small states, but also overrepresents the party that has a bunch of small margin victories. In other words, it rewards good luck. That is truly a strange design for presidential elections. But that is still not the worst part. The worst part of the Electoral College system is something you can't even see because it's a deterrence. What's a deterrence? It's something that rarely happens, but it can scare people from doing certain things. Like a security camera may not catch anything, but it can deter shoplifters, right? So nuclear weapons are rarely used, but they definitely change countries' diplomatic calculations. The Electoral College has one feature that functions as a deterrence. It was used only once in 1824, but it has since deterred viable candidates from forming small parties and deterred voters from voting for small parties. I'm talking about the middle section of the 12th Amendment. You see, a person gets elected if they get a majority of the electoral votes. And if no person has such a majority, guess what? The House of Representatives will choose from the top 3 candidates. I don't even know where to start. You have an electoral college, right? The whole purpose of the electoral college is to elect the president. So you send them from all the states. In the earlier years, they had to ride a horse or something. So why not let them finish the job? Just because they can't reach a majority opinion, you hand the job to the House? Why? Okay, if the purpose of the second round is to reach a majority, why keeping the top 3 instead of top 2? Having 3 candidates means there's still no guarantee of a majority in the second round. So why bother have another round? Including all top 3 in the second round means that it's possible for the third most popular candidate to become the president as long as enough House members like them. What the heck? And if all these aren't strange enough, keep on reading. The House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president, but in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states. The representation from each state having 1 vote. No way. Not this shit again. It means in the second round, California and Wyoming each has 1 vote. That's worse than the original Electoral College round. It would make each Wyoming voter 70 times as important as each California voter. Apparently, the Founding Fathers didn't think they were spoiling the small states enough by having a malapportioned Senate, so they had to do the same to the presidency. You may want to say, that's all right. There are only 2 parties, so there will always be a majority. We don't have to worry about the second round. No, that causal relationship is incomplete. Yes, there are only 2 major parties, which makes it easy to have a majority winner. But why are there only 2 parties in the first place? That may be partly caused by this weird deterrence from the 12th Amendment. Voters and candidates are deterred from joining small parties partly because they are afraid of invoking that part of the amendment and conceding the presidential election to the House, with 1 vote per state. You see what I mean? The 12th Amendment serves as a deterrence against new parties. The fact that it's rarely used doesn't mean it has no effect. It simply means it has deterred the outcome that would have put it to use. It's like a security camera against small parties. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you do it, I'm gonna move the vote to the House. So why do I believe it deterred small parties? Firstly, the lack of majority happened once in 1824. A guy called John Quincy Adams, for the record, I don't know much about him, but I do know that he lost both the popular vote and the electoral vote in the presidential election, but ended up becoming the president anyway. Why? Because nobody had a majority, and the election was sent to the House, and Adams managed to win the most states. So that sent a strong signal to candidates and voters alike that if a no-majority situation was to rise again in the future, it will be hard to say who's going to be president. Now fast forward to 2016. Michael Bloomberg wrote a public letter explaining why he gave up the plan of running as an independent. And he specifically cited the 12th Amendment. He was like, what's the point? Even if I have some success and split the Electoral College 3-way, I'm not going to win the House vote. I'm sure he's not the only one thinking that way. Some people and some parties you would never expect to run may have popped out of nowhere if not for the 12th Amendment. Who knows? Emmanuel Macron won the French presidency with a new party, right? Zelensky too. There could totally be new parties like those in America. But with the 12th Amendment, no serious candidates would give it a try because they don't have a partisan base in the House. Especially since each state has 1 vote in the second round. That House vote can only be won by the Republicans because they have a bunch of small states. So only the Republican nominee can benefit from a no-majority situation. Whether you are left or right or middle, as long as you are not the Republican nominee, you are not going to want to see a 3-way split of the Electoral College. You might ask, what about Jill Stein? Well, Jill Stein didn't try to win, okay? She was not there to win. She was there exactly to help the Republican nominee. If you can't see that, I don't know what to tell you. So you see, the 2-party system is not the justification for the 12th Amendment. On the contrary, it was partly the result of the 12th Amendment. And of course, as I explained before, a consolidated 2-party system further caused other problems like gerrymandering and safe seats. So in my view, these are the weirdest part of the US Constitution. I talked about 1, 2, 3 in the last video and 4 and 5 in this one. This is a weird-ass constitution. It's too old and too rigid. It was like a time bomb, and now it's kind of exploding in front of our faces.